Should the Boston Bruins explore a trade involving Trent Frederic?
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Friday, December 6th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today we're going to be discussing some rumblings in regards to Trent Frederic on the trade market, look at some of the turnaround under Joe Sacco and how it's going to be tested beginning, tomorrow and into next week. And then, of course, we will preview tomorrow's game against the Philadelphia Flyers. Before we get into all that, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan. I've been covering this team for various outlets for almost 20 years. I've been hosting this podcast since 2019. For 5 years prior to that, I was a full-time hockey news editor at The Score. And while there would often be some reports, rumors, rumblings from hockey insiders, prominent and secondary. And we would not really run with a story unless it came from one of the big guys or gals. And that included Elliotte Friedman, who posted his 32 Thoughts column on Thursday and included a note about Trent Frederic. He said, quote, "Teams who like Trent Frederic and playoff-bound clubs love this type of player are debating how serious Boston is about signing him," end quote. This comes a couple weeks after Kevin Weeks indicated that teams are interested in Frederic if he were to become an unrestricted free agent this summer, which he can be. Now, a lot of people took that to mean the Bruins were shopping Frederic, but Weeks' tweet basically said, "In speaking to sources, several teams are interested in pending UFA Trent Frederic. With his size, speed, toughness, character, and skill, he's drawing attention in the marketplace." That didn't really necessarily indicate he was being shopped, but I read that as if he were to become a free agent, there would be interest for sure. Now, the one interesting bit about Friedman's thought was that playoff-bound clubs love this type of player. And despite some improvements under interim head coach Joe Sacco, the Boston Bruins may or may not be a playoff-bound club. There's real arguments to be made that they're not quite at that level, or a bubble team at the very best. They're 6-2 under Sacco. We'll look at some of the numbers behind that later on, but they've only played one playoff level team, and they lost 2-0 to the Vancouver Canucks, which is super interesting. Now, as we discuss trades here, I'm just seeing here on social media that looks like the Rangers are making some big moves here. Jacob Trouba being held out of the lineup, and it's likely that he's either going to be traded or even placed on waivers. Arthur Staple of The Athletic saying if it's not a trade for Trouba, he may be on waivers, and there's a possibility that a team will have a claim ready to go, as happened with Barclay Goodrow back in June. So that's pretty remarkable considering he's their captain, and they're unsatisfied with their season so far, despite the fact they're in a playoff spot. So the Bruins, yeah, they've made some gains, but exploring a deal for Trent Frederic is certainly not without the scope of possibility. And there's a couple of reasons for that. A, he is a pending unrestricted free agent. B, he has no trade protection, so the Bruins can. He's one of a few players that would draw some interest that the Bruins could move without having to have the player waive a no trade clause or whatever. However, the problem is his value may not be that high right now. He's only got 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points so far this season. And really, he's not on pace to match the career numbers that he had last year. 18 goals, 22 assists for 40 points last season, with only 3 goals, 6 assists so far this season. He's on pace for 9 goals and 18 assists for only 26 points. And that's really well below what is expected of Frederick, especially in a contract year. So you either decide, well, we really believe in this guy and we think that he can be part of the turnaround and can really boost that turnaround if he were to get back on track. Or you think, yeah, this guy's not really a core player. He's not someone that we want to invest heavily in moving forward. And instead of losing him in free agency for nothing, as they did with Danton Heinen, Jake DeBrusk, you say, let's trade him, recoup some picks or what have you, and recall a guy like Georgi Merkulov, who has a lot more offensive upside, who can play the left side. He should be up arguably now anyways. He played very well in the time that he had up with the Bruins. So clear the decks, see what you have in a guy like Merkulov over a longer term sample size at the NHL level. Trade Frederick. He has played okay lately with Charlie Coyle and Mark Kastelik on a new look third line with Beecher, Kepke, and McLaughlin on the fourth line. See if you can get more out of Merkulov. See if you can get something for Frederick, or maybe package him for something bigger to add down the line. Because as of right now, Trent Frederick's not giving me much to believe that he deserves a raise or a long-term extension. And especially if the Bruins are not going to be in the playoff picture, do they think that they can make it in and make a long run? Even if they squeeze into the playoffs right now, it's very hard to see them competing with some of the better teams in the Eastern Conference or the Atlantic Division. I don't see them beating Florida, Toronto, Tampa. I don't see them beating New Jersey, Carolina, Washington, maybe even the Rangers. Tomorrow's game against the Philadelphia is going to be huge because of the fact that Philly is right there with the Bruins in terms of point percentage, wildcard spot. We're going to preview that game later on. We're also going to look at some of the stats behind Boston's turnaround and how it will be tested beginning tomorrow and into next week. But when it comes to Trent Frederic, I say if teams come calling, then there's no reason to not pick up the phone and see what teams are offering, especially as we get deeper into the season, closer to the trade deadline. And if after this next stretch, the Bruins take some steps back from this turnaround under Joe Sacco, and we'll look at why that's a possibility here as the podcast continues. Get in on this weekend's NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 wager. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Bruins part of your day, free and available on your favorite podcast app. If you have not subscribed already, there and on YouTube, please do so right this second so that you never miss a thing. So, what is behind Boston's recent resurgence under interim head coach Joe Sacco? Fluto Shinzawa at The Athletic put out a piece this morning pointing to 7 stats signaling Joe Sacco's influence. One of the biggest is that the Bruins are allowing only 1.88 goals per game over this stretch of 8 games. The Bruins, in comparison, were giving up 3.45 goals per game under Jim Montgomery. Sacco's point of emphasis, according to Shinzawa, has been net front coverage, and he's insisting on physicality, good sticks, collapsing wingers in helping defend the slot. And those layers of protection have really helped this improved defense. They're helping each other if there's a breakdown, Nikita Zadorov said after Boston's win this week over Detroit. There's layers of protection there. If one guy makes a mistake, other guys are coming in to clean up for them. And that's been the main change from the start of the year, according to Zadorov. So drastically improved team defense. 1.88 goals per game allowed, which is fewest in the NHL over the past 8 games. Actually, only Utah at 1.86 has been better defensively. The Bruins also are allowing only 1.78 expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. Far stingier than the 2.4 they were allowing over the first 20 games. 4.18 high danger shots against per 60, which is best in the NHL. Reinforces how Sacco is stressing net front lockdown. They are generating more shots per game as well. Now, under Jim Montgomery, they focused on shot quality over quantity, and Montgomery did not generally encourage his defensemen to shoot the puck from the point, waiting instead for forwards to get inside the dots. But now Sacco is encouraging them to just more fire away. Do not pass up on open looks. Even if there's no direct traffic in front of the net, you never know if a puck is going to be bobbled or if it could go in off a defenseman along the way. He's given them a green light to execute more low to high looks and just get more pucks on goal, which is something that I love to see, because if you're passing up opportunities to get the shot on net, again, that whole Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't put on net, or whatever the quote is. Get more pucks on net. The Bruins, it's not, they're not blowing away the opposition with pucks on net. 29.6 is middle of the pack, I think, around 11th. Edmonton leads the way at 32.3 shots per game, but getting the puck on net certainly is part of the answer here. The Bruins have the best penalty kill over the past 8 games, 95%. They've only allowed 1 goal on 20 opportunities, I believe. And that's a drastic improvement. They were only 75.6% under head coach Jim Montgomery. They had also had to kill 78 penalties under Montgomery, which was a league high. They're only 17th, having to, in penalties taken under Joe Sacco. So that also helps as well. You're not putting such a strain on your penalty killers. Another key stat is Jeremy Swayman's .925 save percentage. He's starting to look a lot more like himself. And, adjusting to the life of a number one goalie, adjusting to Linus Ullmark being traded, having no training camp, plus that net front tightness, it's all been helping him get his numbers looking the way we want them to. The last key stat Shinzawa mentioned was five on goals from Brad Marchand. He's come on lately, and he's become a far more dangerous goal scorer. Now, the Bruins desperately need that to come from David Pastrnak as well, who has only, I believe, one goal since Joe Sacco took over. He has been displaying some playmaking skills directly in on Marchand's 2 goals the other night, setting up that game winner against Detroit the other night. But they need him to get his goal scoring going. He only has 1 goal under Joe Sacco, and Sacco, of course, his coaching record would be even greatly more improved if he were to find the back of the net more regularly. Now, Boston will be tested greatly here over the next little bit. They have a game tomorrow against the Philadelphia Flyers, a team that is directly below the Bruins in terms of point percentage in the Eastern Conference. The Bruins right now rank 8th in the East. They've won 3 in a row, 554 point percentage. The Flyers losing last night to Florida. They're slightly behind at 519. Boston's goal differential is -13. Philadelphia is -12. This is a game the Bruins need to keep the momentum going and to keep Philadelphia from gaining any ground here in the race for a playoff spot. And then it does not get easier for the Bruins as they will head out on a 5-game Western Conference road trip that will pit them against the Winnipeg Jets, who rank 2nd in the West in terms of point percentage. Then you have games against Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary. They are all in the top 8 in the Western Conference. And then Seattle, who is at 500 and just on the outside looking in. So Boston, like I mentioned, they've only played 1 playoff level team over the past 8. That was Vancouver, who they lost to 2-0. Their next segment of games, next 6 games, there will be 4 who are in the playoffs, and a team that went to the finals last year. Vancouver is much improved. Winnipeg is one of the best teams in the NHL so far. Calgary is a very big surprise. And then Philly and Seattle, who are both right in the thick of it as well. So this turnaround is really going to be tested here against some of these better teams. It's a make or break segment of games for the Bruins potentially. They could inform whether or not that they want to make some moves and perhaps look to move a Trent Frederic or a Morgan Geekie, both of whom have no trade protection. We'll preview that Philadelphia game here as the podcast continues. Bruins Flyers Saturday afternoon matinee, 1 p.m. at TD Garden before the Bruins head out on a Western Conference road trip next week. This is a bit of a mid-off. It's the third of 3 meetings between these two teams this season. Both have featured shutouts. Boston was shut out 2-0 by Philadelphia back on October 29th. And then Udinese Korpisalo shut out the Flyers back on, November 2nd, making 20 saves in that one. As I mentioned, the Flyers are in the thick of it in terms of a playoff race. They're 12-11-3. The Bruins are 14-11-3. So you can see how they have similar records with the Bruins having 2 more games played. Now, the Flyers did lose last night to the Florida Panthers, but they won their previous 3 heading into that one. And prior to that, they lost to Vegas in a shootout. Then they beat Nashville in overtime. They beat the Rangers. They beat Jim Montgomery's St. Louis Blues in overtime, then lost to the Flyers. The Bruins, of course, have won 3 in a row. 4 of their past 5, 6 of their past 8. The Flyers are led in scoring over the past 5 games by rookie sensation Matvei Michkov. He's got 6 points, 4 assists. Owen Tippett with 3 goals over the past 5 games for them. The Bruins are led in scoring by David Pastrnak. He's got 7 points over his past 5 games, but only 1 goal to go along with 6 assists. Marchand with 4 goals over his past 5 games. They're led in scoring, Philly is, by Travis Konechny, 30 points in 26 games. Michkov with 22 points, and then there's a bit of a drop-off. Couturier, Tippett, Bobby Brink, and the like, all with impressive point totals. Travis Sanheim, who's going to play for Team Canada, leading the way on the blue line. Their goaltending isn't especially fantastic. Samuel Ersson with a .902 save percentage. Ivan Fedotov with an .877 save percentage. They also have Kolosov with an .882 save percentage. Jeremy Swayman will likely get the start. He's up to .893. And the Bruins as a team, .892 in terms of save percentage so far this season. What do the special teams look like for these two teams? Boston's power play still 32nd in the NHL. That's one area that still needs to improve, regardless of who the coach is. The penalty kill up to 16th. Philly's power play is ranked 26th, and they have the 11th ranked penalty kill. So special teams could be a big factor in tomorrow's game. The defense for the Flyers, leakier than Boston's. They rank 27th in the NHL, allowing 3.38 goals per game. They allowed 7 against Florida last night. They're scoring only 2.88 goals per game. Boston's up to 2.54 goals per game, still ranked only 28th. And they're allowing 3 goals per game, which is 15th. So it could be, I wouldn't expect another shutout in this one necessarily, as the Bruins and Flyers meet here for the third and final time. And it could be a big swing game here in the standings. The Bruins could, with the win, raise their point percentage even further. Right now, it's only at .554. They do have 31 points. They're 3 points back of Florida and Toronto in the Atlantic, but Toronto has 3 games in hand. Florida has 1 game in hand. The Bruins are 3 points up on Tampa, but Tampa has 4 games in hand there and a much better goal differential. The Bruins are out of 7th when it comes to goal differential. They've rised to 6th. They're minus 13 right now. Detroit and Montreal are behind them in the conference. It used to be only Montreal and Pittsburgh who had worse goal differentials. Now they are level with the Islanders at minus 13. Detroit, Montreal, Pittsburgh are behind them. Philly's within striking distance. They're at minus 12. The Bruins are at minus 13. Again, the Bruins 6-3-1 over their past 10 games. The Flyers coming into this one 6-3-1 as well, but coming off that loss to Florida. So it should be a pretty entertaining game tomorrow afternoon. A big swing game for sure. And hopefully the Bruins can come out on top, take that momentum into this Western Conference road trip, which is going to be a very pivotal 5-game stretch for this team. That's it for today's episode, my friends. That's it for this week's episodes. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in, for all the support. Please do share if Locked On Bruins is in your Spotify Wrapped. Tag me on LinkedIn. What am I talking about? Spending too much time on LinkedIn these days, looking for a new full-time job. Tag me on Instagram, on X, on Blue Sky. And please do take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Have a fantastic weekend. It's snowing here. We're going to try to go to a Christmas market maybe this weekend. Maybe watch a Christmas movie or two. Keep it a bit low-key before things get really busy next weekend and beyond heading into the holidays. You guys are all great. Thank you so much once again. Please do subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube if you have not already. Check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast next to get some tips from Steal and Flip. And it's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Go Breeze!